We join this recording just a couple of minutes into it, just after our District Governor, Alistair Robb, has completed his welcomes. Enjoy the rest.
Right, good morning. Thank you, Alistair. Good morning, folks. Kids Out is the reason I've asked you here. And Kids Out is where Rotarian hearts beat strongest and echo strongly into our communities. However, the pandemic spared nobody. We lost Kids Out last year. And obviously, as we've moved through this year, there was great hope that perhaps things would happen. What you have from me embedded in the papers, and it will be circulated to all clubs, is an up-to-date statement that's been drafted by Steve Cartwright. Now, Steve is the national lead when it comes to Kids Out. If you haven't yet met Steve, you're missing something, and he is welcome in any opportunity to talk about Kids Out at either area meetings or club meetings. However, there's been announcements about roadmaps, and I had to say to Steve, can we just reflect that there are 4 nations working at different paces here? And within that, he's really advising that as much as everybody would like to see the traditional June Kids Out event go ahead, it really is not going to be happening. We can be realistic and responsible and accept that we don't want to create risks. In the note, Steve makes the point that just because it doesn't happen on the second week of June, it doesn't mean to say a traditional Kids Out event couldn't happen later this year. And he emphasizes he's very keen to hear from any club or groups of clubs that come together to say they'd like to do something. But let's also just emphasize that Kids Out isn't just one event a year. They do things across the year. Last year, because of the pandemic, there was a very successful Christmas toy box appeal. And that is something they're going to take forward this year. And Steve, being a good Rotarian and a good planner, also put forward that because of not seeing a traditional event this year, they're bringing forward an alternative, his plan B, to help buy cinema tickets to help kids get something special to happen. So just emphasize that to you, that it's going to be it's in the report, it's going to be circulated. I'd like you to pick that up in your clubs. Just emphasizing Steve is very happy to receive Zoom invites. He gets on the magic carpet of Zoom. He will get to your meeting and you will have a great discussion. Can I also ask clubs to do one other thing? Some of you may have already done it as you plan. You've planned perhaps for this year, but possibly for next year. Have a Kids Out coordinator. And can I say District 1010 could greatly benefit from having a district lead as well to work within the Convec team. So that's 2 invites to yourselves. Please pick up something in the club. And if anybody would like to work cross-district and support Steve and Kids Out in that way, that would be most welcome. So stop at that point. Happy to take any questions, but you've got a note about going forward, and hopefully it will be better sooner, but we're not there yet. Thank you
very much, David. Does anyone have any questions for David?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Gordon. Right, go ahead.
I noticed on the report that came out, it said it applies to Odeon cinemas only. I don't think there's any Odeons, certainly in Aberdeen or North Aberdeen. I don't know about the Central Belt.
Probably there is in Central Belt. I, like you, agree. There's none in Aberdeen. There were, but no more.
Yeah.
But the note also says that they'll offer a subsidy and they will talk directly with you for alternative cinemas if this is an idea your club would wish to pursue. He's very approachable, likes to be contacted direct. He's got his fingers on the pulse on this one, and will work with anybody and everybody to make successful Kids Out events happen.
Anyone else with any questions?
David, can I just, I don't know if you can hear me okay, but can I suggest you contact the Cinema Exhibitors Association, which represents all the independent cinemas in the UK, including Scotland, and they would be able to maybe, collectively circulate people to make sure that as many cinemas as possible can take part in that.
I'm happy to do that. Have you possibly got a contact details you can share with me through chat?
Yeah, I'll drop them onto the chat just now.
Thank you. Steve might have it covered, but let's support him and let's give him that information concisely. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, David. Anyone else? No. Okay. If there's nothing else in that, we can move on. I'd like to move on now to the 2021-22 district budget. And as you'll be aware, a draft budget was issued to clubs a few weeks ago. Since the issue of the budget, we've been informed that the reduction in our district grant from Rotary Great Britain Ireland is not going to be as drastic as we anticipated, which will change our income for this year. And also, as I've been visiting clubs over the last few weeks, many members have expressed some concerns over the budget and some of the proposed expenditure figures that we put in there. Now, as with any budget, especially at times like this, you'll appreciate that an awful lot of our projections that we're making are really, they're guesses. They're sticking the thumb in the air and making a real guess. However, what we have done is we've listened to the comments from clubs, and what we've decided to do is delay the proposed vote on the budget so that we can look at the figures again, see where we can address an awful lot of the concerns that have been raised. So after a short consultation period over the next week or so, we will be sending out a revised budget to clubs, and we will carry out an electronic vote on the proposals in another 3 weeks' time. But what I'd like to do now is invite District Treasurer Ewan to give us some more details on the proposed areas for review in the budget. Over to you, Ewan.
Thank you, Alistair. I'll endeavour to screen share just a moment. Okay, it would be too simple if the budget went straight forward, wouldn't it? It would be boring, hey? So you were issued with some budget notes earlier in the month, and what I'm showing here is revisions with changes shown in italics. And as E.G. Alistair says, there won't be a vote on the budget today. The district grant that we get from Rotary GB&I has changed, and we're reviewing comments from clubs. And once we've got all the comments and reviewed them, we'll issue a revised budget for approval by email. But as I said previously in the notes, clearly forecasting income and expenditure in the current climate is extremely difficult, potential for future changes. However, great progress on the vaccinations, and so we are assuming the majority of district business will resume normality for the next Rotary year. But we're considering a blend of face-to-face and online meetings, with Zoom being a preferred option. And for example, we could do one council meeting online and one face-to-face. District meetings could predominantly be online. And also, the Rotary First magazine and the conference format are being looked at for savings opportunities. Looking at the income side on the budget, as you'll have seen that the club capitation, the district dues, we've proposed a £7 reduction from £14 to £7 a head for the next year. You'll know it's zero this year. Our district dues are actually some of the lowest in Rotary GB&I, very definitely. However, the district grant, as Alistair indicated there, when the draft budget was put together, it was indicated that the grant would be reduced to £13,000 from over £25,000 for the coming year, although the amount hadn't been finalised. And then at a recent meeting of the Governing Council, 25 district governors and others, it was agreed that some of the Rotary GBNI reserves would be used, and recognising savings have been and are being made in the Ulster organisation, etc., so could increase the support to the district grant for the next year. The effect of this for our district is that the district grant will now be approximately £18,700, although the actual amount will depend firstly on approval of the GBNI plan and budget at the annual business meeting on the 21st of May, and it will depend on allocations between the districts, which will be based on numbers of clubs on the 1st of July. I'd just comment that our district does receive the largest grant in Rotary GBNI, but going forwards with the expected reducing numbers of Rotarians, it's anticipated that grants will be reduced by Rotary GBNI in future years, certainly in the next 2 to 3 years after the next year. So that's the background there. The last item on income, you'll have seen that we saying again that youth competition fees will be zero, and clubs will not be charged to participate in youth competitions during the next year. So to go on to expenditure, we had already said that we expected district officers' expenses to be significantly reduced from the 12,000 approved this year to 6,000 coming year because of online activities replacing physical meetings. But in addition to that, we are reviewing the district governor and DGE expenses for the coming year. On the topic of public image, obviously a significant but important area, because clearly our magazine is one of the ways, a key way that we can attract new Rotarians by managing to leave these magazines in places that the community will see them. Clubs have managed to attract new Rotarians, and so there has been success, but clearly we recognise that there's a significant amount of money here. We see that we'll be continuing obviously with the district handbook going out and to continue to produce the monthly communications as well. However, the expenditure on the magazine is being reviewed in terms of size and numbers of copies. As I said, youth competitions, our plan is to resume them in the next year, and so we've got £10,000 in the expenditure for the youth competitions. Also, the conference, £12,000 is the normal subvention for a conference, and that's what's planned for later in the next Rotary year. However, the format's under review, and we do recognise that although we haven't shown a surplus in the draft budget that was issued, there has been a draft a surplus in recent years. It's varied between about £1,000 and £7,000, and obviously that is a topic that could be recognised, maybe potentially, but we're going to look at that some more. Finally, additional items of expenditure for next year to support membership. We proposed £5,000, and that still is the case, to support club membership initiatives up to £500 per club, and there are rules around this that are available, and £500 for new clubs to help get them started. We're also proposing £2,000 for area training seminars. However, the format for this is now again under review. So as DG Alistair says, we have received some comments, but I'd welcome any further comments about the budget. If you'll send them to me within the next week, i.e. next Saturday, then we can review them and issue a revised budget for approval by email. As a last point for information, the proposed Rotary GB&I subscription, which includes the subs to Rotary International, is proposed to continue at £67 per person for next year, as per this year, and that's also subject to approval at the annual business meeting. So that the plan was that, or the business plan that was approved last year indicated an increase going to £70, but that's being held at 67. And if you'd like to see more about how the subscription, the Rotary GB&I subscription is spent, the best source is the annual report, which is available on the Rotary GB&I website. If you go to events and the annual business meeting, you can see the report in detail. But I would just comment that almost 40% of the £67 subscription goes to Rotary International. We all benefit substantially from the insurance that is arranged by Rotary GB&I, and also the second largest expenditure beneath, which it comes after the amount going to Rotary International, it is in membership promotion. So that's a fairly rapid review. I'd be happy to take comments, questions, but I would encourage you to, I do want them in email, please, if you send them by next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ewan. Does anyone have any questions or comments they'd like to put to Ewan about the budget right now? I'm not seeing anything. I think you've got off there, Ewan.
Thank you very much.
No, okay. Great, thanks very much. It's now time to introduce our first speaker of the day, and that's Rotary Great Britain Ireland President Tom Griffin. Now, Tom is a proud Scotsman, and he joined Rotary in 1984, but just exactly the same as I did, he attended his first Rotary meeting much earlier when he was only 18. Like many of our clubs do towards the end of each academic year, Kirkintilloch Rotary Club, which is just outside Glasgow, invited a school leaver to talk about what they were going to do when they left school. And in Tom's year, he was given the job of speaking to the club. In 1972, he moved to Ayrshire and got involved with some projects between Round Table and Rotary, where both organisations had been doing things in that community. Then in 1984, Tom joined the Selkirk Rotary Club in the Borders. Over the years, his relocation for work has meant that he's also been a member of Malden Rotary Club in Essex, and now Woodbridge Devon Rotary Club in Suffolk. Please welcome Rotary Great Britain Ireland President for 2020-2021, President Tom Griffin. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you for that that welcome and thank you for your invitation. And perhaps I should point out that I have lived a fairly peripatetic life. I was born in Hamilton, but when I was 6 weeks old, my parents moved to Dunfermline, and so I lived virtually the first 10 years of my life in your district. Although, unlike you, Alistair, I'm not a Fifer. But I do have strong affiliations with your district as well as most other parts of Scotland. So thank you for the invitation. It's been a strange year for everyone, hasn't it? Over the last few years, the role of the Rotary GB&I president has changed I know when I was DG 9 years ago, the president that year spent much of his year touring the districts. More recently, that has ceased to be the case, and the president has concentrated much more on leading the association. I have found myself taking that bit about not touring the districts to the extreme. I'm just about 9 months into office and I've hardly left my house. So there have been some disappointments there, and I've missed the opportunity to meet people face to face. I've missed the opportunity to go to a number of events. But there have been many positives. Positives in the sense that I have been able to visit a lot of clubs and districts through the wonderful medium of Zoom. Visits that I could never have made physically in the time available. And there've been many positives for Rotary as a whole. Clubs generally have shown themselves to be adaptable, to be willing to embrace new ways of doing things. And this morning's meeting is a classic example of that. As you yourself said in your introduction, Alistair, Rotary has responded magnificently to community needs during the pandemic, helping the housebound, supporting food banks, buying computers for kids studying at home, buying PPE, and more recently helping at mass vaccination centres. And in a lot of the GB&I area, our great contribution to local communities during the pandemic is at last actually being recognised. We're getting the public awareness and public image benefits of that. And on a wider point, but also positive, in the community as a whole, we've seen that community spirit, the willingness to volunteer to help those in need, is far from dead. So, where does that take us? What are the lessons from Rotary in lockdown? I think the first is that we must be ready to grasp the opportunities that these positives offer us. We need to be clear about what we're trying to achieve and how we are going to achieve it. Last year, RI President Holger Knack said that he wanted all clubs to hold an annual strategic meeting at which they would examine themselves and where they thought they would be in 5 years' time. And I think that kind of strategic thinking and planning is even more important now. And I would say if clubs haven't already done so, I would encourage them to do so now. With any luck, in a few months, we will be able to meet in a more flexible way. We might be able to meet the way we used to. And we need now to be thinking about what that means and how our clubs will operate when we have that greater flexibility. And I say that because the COVID-19 pandemic is a massively disruptive event. It's on the par of major wars or great technological change. We cannot expect the post-COVID world to look the same as it did in 2019. And we cannot expect the post-COVID Rotary world to look as it did in 2019. And as I say, as we start to see the end of lockdown, we need to be thinking about what we have learned in the last few months and what that means for our club. So that's the first lesson I take from our current situation. The second is that we mustn't become so preoccupied with COVID-19 that we forget the bigger Rotary picture. First and foremost, we must continue the fight to eradicate polio. We must remember that however close we are, however wonderful it is that the World Health Organization's Africa region is free of the wild polio virus, the task isn't finished. And unless we finish the job, the disease will return. And you know, it should be a matter of pride that elements of infrastructure put in place for polio eradication have proved immensely valuable during the COVID pandemic. Elements such as disease surveillance and strategies for disease control in remote communities. Now, of course, it's unavoidable that clubs' fundraising activities have suffered badly during the pandemic. But one of the consequences has been that contributions from GB&I to end polio are about 30% down compared with the previous year. Somehow we need to try to turn that round. 30 years ago, we made a promise to the children of the world. We must see through on that promise. So much has been achieved. Let's not waste that achievement. The third lesson I take from our current situation relates to our membership. Now, I make no apology for banging on about membership. Without members, we cannot bring to the world the benefits of our service. Unless we continually refresh our membership, we will stagnate, shrink, and cease to be an effective force in our communities. And that is a real risk. Last Rotary year, in GB&I, we lost almost 2,000 members. That's the equivalent of an entire district. And the average age of our membership continues to rise. And moreover, 30 years after we welcomed women into Rotary, only about 17% of Rotarians in Great Britain and Ireland are female. And our overall record of diversity in membership is poor. Now, as I've said many times, I have no problem with white British males aged over 70, not least because I am one. And RI President Holger is equally right when he says there is no wrong age to be a Rotarian. But clubs, which are largely composed of Rotarians past normal retirement age, are inevitably likely to be less active, to struggle to find members willing to accept club office, and are certainly not likely to be attractive to potential young Rotarians, individuals of the age I was when I joined Rotary half a lifetime ago. That's a potentially bleak picture. But you know, I'm quite optimistic about our future, and I'm optimistic for three reasons. First is that today Rotarians have an unrivaled opportunity to breathe life into what I always think of as the forgotten avenue of Rotary service, vocational service. We have in our membership an enormous and largely untapped reservoir of business and professional knowledge and experience at a time where our economy is facing perhaps its biggest challenge for 90 years. We have the opportunity to use those skills to create and support, for example, social enterprise initiatives, an opportunity to demonstrate just what we have to offer to our local communities to meet real need. I've already alluded to my second reason for optimism, the fact that during the pandemic, many people have discovered the joy of volunteering. What an opportunity for Rotary to tap into. Fine, you may say, but in the past few decades, we've been poor at bringing in younger members. Why should things change now? You may make the point that you don't need to join a club and pay dues to give service to your community. You don't have to join a club and pay dues to be connected. So why should someone join Rotary? The answer is that Rotary has so much more to offer. No, you don't need to join a club and pay dues to give service, but in Rotary, you have the opportunity to serve not just locally, not just your local community, but nationally and internationally. Rotary opens to members the opportunity of being part of a truly global family. It opens to members the opportunity to harness the power and reach of the Rotary Foundation so as massively to increase the impact of their service at home and overseas. Surveys of younger people indicate that they are as keen to give something back to society as any other generation, that they welcome mentoring, and significantly that they want to be part of something big and have a global rather than a purely local perspective. Doesn't that sound like Rotary? So why have we failed so badly to refresh and rejuvenate our membership? I think it's because too often we inadvertently put obstacles in the way of younger people joining us. Obstacles in terms of the time and cost commitment we expect. Obstacles in the form of clubs whose style and culture strikes a potential younger member as old-fashioned. So when we look to life after lockdown, we need to be asking ourselves, is our club attractive to the next generation of Rotarians? If the answer is yes, that's great. If no, or maybe, then what are you going to do about it? Can we make our club more attractive to this potential younger generation? Because if we can't, then I believe clubs should be looking to start new clubs which are. And the options are there. We have much more flexibility now in how Rotary works, how clubs can run themselves. We can start a satellite club with 8 members. We no longer need to wait until we have 20 so we can charter an entirely new club. We have new models, clubs which meet informally, clubs which are less demanding on members' time or pocket, clubs which are more family friendly, clubs which are focused on the kind of service their members want, cause-based clubs. The challenges, what I call the obstacles, which inadvertently we put in the way of younger people joining us, can easily be overcome. I believe that in Great Britain and Ireland, we need to set ourselves the target of ensuring that there is a vibrant, active club in each of our significant communities. If it doesn't currently exist, then let's create it. All that is needed is to find a small group of interested people and help them to grow a new club. It can be done. It has been done. My third reason for optimism lies in our new direct membership initiative, which Rotary GB&I has launched. People who are attracted by the prospect of Rotary but can't find a club which suits their lifestyle can join direct at minimal cost and hopefully find others in their neighbourhood with whom they can then get together and start a new club. There is much that clubs can and need to do to grasp the opportunities open to us today to refresh and revitalise Rotary. But districts and Rotary GB&I itself need to be as effective as possible in providing the leadership, guidance, encouragement and support to clubs which are contributing to this effort and in taking the initiative themselves to create new clubs. For that reason, Rotary GB&I is taking 2 initiatives. First, we're encouraging districts to cooperate, to work together, to share resources where they find it difficult because of declining numbers to fill all the posts they are expected to fill. Now, Rotary GB&I cannot, of course, legislate to make districts cooperate. And so the pace at which districts will work together will be determined by the districts themselves, dependent on their own circumstances. And this will be an evolutionary process, with different areas moving at different speeds. Second, Governing Council will be recommending to the business meeting on the 21st of May a significant reform of Rotary GB&I's governance. Currently, our governing body comprises the officers of Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, people like me, and the 25 district governors of the districts in Britain and Ireland. So we have a governing body of around 31 people, which is pretty unwieldy in terms of its size, at least 26 of whom change every year. So there's practically no continuity. Each year, Governing Council effectively starts from scratch. What's more, 25 of those 31 are there not because they necessarily have the skills, background and experience to serve on the Governing Council or are necessarily even interested in doing so, but because they have been elected to an important job, leading their district. Governing Council is, in effect, a second job. For some, at worst, it's a distraction from their important principal job of leading their district. If we were designing a governance structure for Rotary GB&I today, we would not create what we have. Now, Governing Council is a very good vehicle for district governors to share experience, to share solutions to common problems, to work together on initiatives to strengthen their districts. But it's not fit for purpose when it comes to providing a strategic lead to Rotary GB&I. Now, that's not a criticism of current or past district governors. It's a criticism of the structure with which they have and continue to operate. Now, a few years ago, we tried to change that, and the changes were approved by the Rotary GB&I membership at 2 successive annual business meetings. But the changes we were proposing then needed the approval of the RI Council on Legislation, and although they got a majority there, they didn't get the necessary 2/3 majority, so they failed. This year, RI has been examining the possibility of creating regional structures, and that's given us the impetus to look again at how we operate so that we can demonstrate to RI what a successful, effective regional structure might look like. We have a good regional structure. We have some issues with it. We need to address those issues. Addressing those issues will not by themselves address our major problems, particularly our problem of membership, but it will put Rotary and GB&I in a much stronger position to help districts and clubs and to take initiatives itself to address that significant problem, that significant challenge of refreshing and rejuvenating Rotary. And so the current Governing Council will be proposing to the business meeting in May that the governing body be reduced in size to 13 members, a much more manageable number. That 13 will include the General Secretary, Amanda Watkin, who of course won't have a vote, but the remaining 12 will each serve for 3 years, and their term of service will be staggered so that 1/3 will retire each year, thus giving us the continuity that currently is so sadly lacking. And as I see, this will enable the new governing body to take a multi-year approach to the big strategic issues of allocating resources and directing Rotary GB&I's activities most effectively. Moreover, we propose that the majority of those members will be selected in a way which will ensure that those who are serving in the new body, which we'll be calling the Rotary GB&I board, have the skills, knowledge, and experience we need in the governing body. And we're proposing that any active Rotarian in these islands may put themselves forward for consideration for membership of the board, not just past district governors, so that we can tap into the whole reservoir of talent in our membership, not just those who have previously put themselves forward to be a DG. The board will be accountable to the annual business meeting in a way which the current body, comprising as it does mainly DGs, cannot be. This time, the changes we are putting forward do not need the approval of Council on Legislation. If Rotary GB&I's membership approves them this May, they can be put into effect. The change will also enable us to do away with the current executive committee, thus removing a tier of governance. In parallel with this, we are proposing to establish a forum on which the 25 district governors will sit, which the board must consult on major issues, and which can provide the vehicle for district governors to share ideas, solutions, their own initiatives, and so on. If these proposals are approved by the business meeting in May, the next 6 months will be taken up with putting more detail in place and recruiting the inaugural board members, with the board going live on the 1st of July 2022. I encourage clubs to make sure that their voting delegates for the business meeting are registered, to encourage the delegates to attend on the 21st of May, 7 p.m. online, to listen to the debate and to support these important proposals. I do so because I believe we stand at a threshold for our great organisation. The COVID pandemic has thrown up a myriad of problems which we've addressed remarkably well, but also a host of opportunities. Let's grasp them. This year, RI President Holliger chose as his theme, Rotary Opens Opportunities. When he did so, I don't think he could have believed that it would be such an appropriate theme, because Rotary does open opportunities. It opens up to us the opportunity to be part of a worldwide group of people who share our values, our ideals, and a code of ethics to which we adhere in our personal and business lives. It opens up to us opportunities for fun, fellowship, satisfaction in doing good, personal growth, the opportunity to exercise leadership in our clubs and in our communities. It has opened and continues to open to millions throughout the world the opportunity to go to school, to have access to medical services, to have access to clean water. And it has opened and will continue to open to millions throughout the world the greatest opportunity of all, the opportunity of life itself. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening. Stay well, good luck, and let's grow Rotary together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Great to hear from you, and great to hear your ideas. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to put to Tom before we move on? I'm rapidly scanning screens here. I'm not seeing anyone. If anyone wants to say anything, please. All right, Peter Vermeulen.
Yeah, Tom, I've been harping on about it to our district for quite a while, but why does Rotary International need so much cash from us? Why does Rotary GB and I need so much cash from us? It is a big issue with attracting new members in my area. Many people, I think we could attract to be members, but they cannot afford that £67 per year. It is just too much. We are helping them with food banks. I know these people. I'm knocking on their doors, and they would be great Rotarians, and they would love to be Rotarians, but can't afford it. They're friends of our Rotary Club, and that is the best that we can offer them. But these people are being excluded because of the cost for us to help in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I mean, I think there's two questions there. There's one about RI and there's one about Rotary GB&I. But beforehand, I will just pick up on the premise behind your comment. Yes, there will be people who find £67 a year a challenge, but let's just put that in perspective. Just think about how much £67 is. It's less than a cup of coffee a week. It is not a lot of money. It is not, to some people, of course, it will be a lot of money, but to the vast majority of people, frankly, it's not a lot of money. What do you get from it? You get all the support that is available from RI. You get the training which RI and Rotary GB&I provide to Rotary leaders. You get, as Ewan mentioned earlier on, you get insurance, or clubs get insurance free of charge. That doesn't come at nil cost. You get the market, you get the initiatives such as the Rotary Global Hub I mentioned before, which the direct membership initiative, which is essential if we're going to try to grow our membership. Now, you know, a lot of the time when I speak to clubs and districts, they say two things. One, why doesn't Rotary do a lot of television advertising in order to draw people's attention to what we do and get new members? And two, why does Rotary charge £67 a year for its membership? Think about that. We do what we can in terms of promotion, but everything we do costs some money, and the support which you get costs actually not very much in real terms. But, and this is when we come to the but, Rotary, okay, Rotary in 1010 would cost you £67 for RI and Rotary GB&I. And I think in a normal year, what, £14 for district sub? So that takes us to £81. And let's add a little bit for club administration. I don't know. My club isn't very good at keeping its fees down, so we're not typical. But you don't pay a lot there. So say you're talking about, I don't know, £10 a month, £120 a year. But you know, Rotary doesn't cost £120 a year. It probably costs you about £1,500 a year. It probably costs you about £1,500 a year because you have a meal every week and you have a drink with that meal and you do special events. They are not essential and integral parts of Rotary. We just add on and add on and add on so that the real cost of Rotary is unaffordable to a lot of our potential members, and particularly our younger members. And that's what we need to be concentrating on. That's what we need to be concentrating on in terms of when we're talking about the cost of Rotary. And just another point about cost. Every time our membership reduces, the per capita impact on Rotary GB&I becomes greater. Just think, you know, at last Rotary year, £67, we lost 2,000 of those £67. I think that's about £134,000 out of not a very big budget. And so that, you know, when we start to turn the corner and bring in new members, then our financial situation will get easier. So there's a whole lot of answers. There's a whole lot of issues wrapped up in your question, Peter, but thank you for it.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone else with any questions for Tom before we move on? I don't see
No
anyone.
hands up.
No hands up, Ken?
No.
No. Okay. Well, thank you again, Tom. Great to hear from you. But now it's back to me for a wee while.
Thank you.
Many of you will have heard me speak over the last couple of months as I go around clubs discussing the recent membership task force report. I've had the pleasure already of visiting 43 clubs, and I've still got another 27 booked and some more still to come online yet. But really, what I want to talk about here is very similar to an awful lot of what Tom has just been saying there. Our membership is in decline, and we have to make it a priority in doing something about that. But addressing the decline in membership is not a 3-month job. It's not a one-person job. One of the first recommendations in the task force report was to recruit an ongoing membership chair. So, for all of you who don't know this already, I'm happy to say that after my year as District Governor ends in June, I will be stepping straight into the role of membership chair for the district team so that we can carry on with our plan and give it continuity for the next 3 years. Now, the important thing about this plan is that it's a combined approach to dealing with our problem, with the membership, public image and learning and development teams working closely together alongside our international, our youth, community and foundation teams in order that we can deliver a coordinated support for clubs in order to assist them with their recruitment, their retention and also the development of new Rotarians. For us to continue to recruit new members, we must make our clubs attractive to new people, and that's exactly what Tom was saying. Many clubs in our district, I'm delighted to say from the ones that I've visited so far, many clubs have already taken huge steps to do just that. Many clubs have already taken steps to look at the future and bring in this flexibility that Tom spoke about. And I'm confident that by the end of lockdown, we will see a huge number of clubs adopting this more flexible and inclusive arrangements for their meetings and projects. What we have to do now is to continue to develop our new and improved Rotary, but probably most importantly, we have to get better at getting the message out to the public. Making these changes to our clubs is no use unless we let the public see that we are a different organisation from the one that they perceive us to be. And what we will do is, we'll do that by giving a huge amount of effort into our public image over the next couple of years. Soon, we'll have a brand new public image team in place that will be available to work with clubs to make sure we're getting that message out there. We want to expand the use of different social media platforms. We need to encourage and assist clubs in doing things like making short videos. We're going to look at targeted marketing campaigns to get the great message about what we do out to the people in our communities. Now, some of you will have heard this before. Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. You're probably sick fed up hearing me say that. But prospective members seldom care about where you meet or which speakers you have booked. What people nowadays care about is what you do. It's the work that you put into your communities and the difference that we make to people's lives. And by engaging with the public image and social media team, we can help improve the penetration of your publicity into your communities and there hopefully generate new members. And the next thing we need to look at is why we lose members, because we can actually recruit reasonably well, but unfortunately we lose more than we bring in. In the first 6 months of this Rotary year, even during lockdown, we were able to recruit 76 new members in this district, but unfortunately we lost 97. And we've got to ask why this is. Now, obviously there's reasons that we can't be in control of. Things like moving home, changing jobs, illness, passing to higher service, for example. But there's also things we can control, like how our clubs operate, how we support our members, how we deal with disputes in our clubs, and importantly, how we look after and how we mentor our new members. And with this in mind, I want to introduce two things to the district. Number one is, I want to have quarterly Zoom meetings. And the only people invited to these meetings will be people who are new to Rotary, people who have just joined within that last 3-month period. And they can come along to these Zoom meetings and meet people at the same level in Rotary as they are, meet the district team, find out about how other clubs operate, chat with the district team, find out how the district operates, and hopefully feel comfortable enough to maybe ask some of the daft wee questions that they're maybe not comfortable about asking in their own clubs, but really to get a broader knowledge of how the Rotary works. And the second thing I want to introduce is mentor training, and every club will be invited to put forward a couple of people, a couple of club members, established club members, who can go through the Rotary training and mentoring of new members. It's so important that we look after these new members because a third of all of the people that we lose to Rotary every year are people who have been there for less than 2 years. And we have to start looking after these new Rotarians better and hopefully by mentoring them and giving them a wee bit more introduction, we can hold on to them. And as I've already said, public image is going to be crucial, absolutely crucial, in making clubs attractive to new members. Clubs in general do not promote themselves particularly well. And what we want to do is provide ongoing practical help with making public image a real priority for your club. Social media in its various forms is absolutely critical in all of this. We must embrace the alternative social media platforms available to us. Yes, let's continue to use Facebook. It's still predominantly for 45 plus age group, still the most effective form of social media, but we have to look at these other methods as well. But we also have to give thought to how we use it. And as I've said to clubs already, how about making videos? Tests have shown that there's over 30% more engagement with a video than just with text. So with this in mind, I've been working with a local IT and app developer to provide clubs with a couple of pieces of software absolutely free of charge. The first of these pieces of software is a very simple piece of video editing software, which will allow clubs to make short videos just on their phones or on their cameras, edit them down to a usable size, add some text, some headlines, some highlights, and post them onto their social media page. Great wee bit of software. The second thing that this company would like to make available is a piece of software to help with your social media postings. So this piece of software will allow you to create a post within it and then tell the software which of the social media platforms you would like it to go out on. So you tick the box saying Facebook, you tick the box saying Instagram, you tick the box saying WhatsApp, click the button and it will automatically propagate each of these platforms with your post, saving you a huge amount of time and automatically formatting to fit each of those different platforms. So hopefully both of these will be available quite soon to distribute to clubs. And the next thing we need to talk about is new clubs. In recent years, the district has lost 4 clubs. And there are a number of clubs, admittedly, which may not see this year out. And it's our duty to replace these clubs. The district will be targeting areas where we see the possibility of doing something new. But we also need to target Rotarians who have the drive and the ambition and the thick skin to step up and lead new club formation. The other thing we're looking at are things like cause-based clubs. And we've already had 2 expressions of interest in doing something like that. One, which will be a club with members drawn from the armed forces and the veterans in our district. And the second is a club that's been suggested that will only concentrate on environmental issues, which hopefully can attract a slightly younger demographic into Rotary. But 2 very exciting developments that we hope to bring forward in the next short while. But I do think the main area of new clubs may be in e-clubs. And there's now 4 clubs and individuals within our district who've expressed an interest in looking at forming an e-club in their area. And I'll be working with these groups to take these ideas forward. But please, I ask you all, you shouldn't see these new clubs as competition. They're also not in any way undermining what you and your club achieve. They're groups of people who are choosing to do Rotary in a different way. Not better, not worse, just differently. And district will provide support and help for any group or individual who'd like to look at forming a new club in our district. So that really is the brief outline of our district focus of a coordinated approach to membership development in the next few years. District is here to support clubs throughout the process. And I hope, as in my position as membership chair, to be speaking to you all many, many times in the future, hopefully to tell you all about the successes that we're having. Thanks very much for listening to my bit about membership. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to? I know most of you have probably heard me speak about membership already, but
Alistair, I'm John Martin Fraser, but I would just like to think that if you're going to have an e-club, you know, you could have conventional Rotarians joining that club. Could it be set up so that we don't have a dual fees? You know, they're referring that £67 going to RI, like 40 RI and 67 per capita. That would be okay, but if you were to be, if members had to pay twice because we're also affiliated in e-club, I don't think that would get started.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be a member of two clubs, John. So, you know, if someone leaves their traditional club to join an e-club, their subscription would just be paid to the e-club instead of the new club. So that wouldn't be an issue. I don't see anything else, I don't think.
Can't see anything, Alistair.
Alistair?
Robin?
Yeah, Alistair, I was interested in your suggestion moving forward regarding inviting new members to a Zoom chat with you. Now, I just wonder, will these new members not be a wee bit intimidated in doing that, being new members?
I'm hopeful, Robin, that because the only other people at the meeting, out with a few district folk, will be just people at the same level as they are, that hopefully they wouldn't feel too intimidated. But
No,
what I have said is that if that's the way they feel, I'm quite happy for them to bring along their mentor from the club with them,
right,
an experienced Rotarian to take part as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't like to think anyone would come on and feel uncomfortable, Robin. Definitely not.
No, well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't bother me, but you know, it may bother one or two people.
No, I understand. Yeah, we will look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if there's nothing else, I'll move on from there, because next on the agenda is another speaker, who is Barry Fisher from Keep Scotland Beautiful. What I'd like to do first is hand over to our district environmental lead, Malcolm Rooney, who's going to introduce Barry and tell you a bit more about the district plans for environmental causes. Over to you, Malcolm.
Okay, morning folks, thanks Alistair. First of all, this is an idea that began in 1020, and the proposal is that the 3 Rotary districts in Scotland cooperate and collaborate with Keep Scotland Beautiful. Now, as Alistair said, Barry Fisher has joined us. Barry is the Chief Executive Officer in KSB, and I would just like to invite him to talk to us now. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see everyone, and thanks again for inviting me along. Malcolm, thanks for the kind introduction. I have had the pleasure of speaking to many Rotary groups over the last year since I started as the new Chief Executive at Keep Scotland Beautiful, and it's been a real pleasure to speak to Rotary groups right across the country. I should say that I'm speaking to you, I think I'm just inside the 1010 boundary from St Fillan's, so hopefully that gives me massive credibility to you all. But it really is a great pleasure. Just to guide the conversation, if you're happy, I'm just going to throw up a few slides. And Malcolm, if you can give me the thumbs up that you can see it okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. So, as I say, I really appreciate the time this morning. Just to recap for some groups who haven't spoken to before. Keep Scotland Beautiful is an environmental charity that operates right across Scotland through an extraordinarily diverse network of community-based groups, delivering a real broad range of activities to do with a range of environmental issues, and some of which are really, really particularly local. And I think that's something, a real theme, which I think will be of interest to Rotary. So in terms of what we do, you know, fundamentally we're an organisation that wants a clean, green, sustainable Scotland. But in terms of the mission, that, you know, the things that our staff do every day, what we're really interested in is supporting people to make changes, whether those are individuals, communities, or indeed organisations. And fundamentally, we see the improvements to the environment not just for the environment itself, but we also think, and I think last year has certainly taught us the importance to us of clean, green, good quality spaces, and we know that it makes a massive difference to people's health and well-being. So the four objectives we have are to reduce waste and litter and help Scotland be litter-free and have a circular economy. We want to support Scotland's fantastic ambition towards net zero by 2045 in terms of its carbon emissions. And we also want to protect and enhance places where people live and, of course, where they now increasingly work as well. And fundamentally, we also want an organisation that can deliver that change, that has the capacity to lead that change, and make all those things a reality. The way in which we do it, we have capacity within the organisation to undertake audits and assessments of place and organisations and places. But also what's really important in that space is that we also are able to offer awards to people. So we run a number of different programmes. Some of you may be familiar with the Green Flags for Parks. We also have a National Award for Environmental Excellence, which is primarily aimed at the private sector for organisations to celebrate their sustainability journey, if you like. So we're really positive about the changes that people and organisations can make, but we also want to celebrate that as well. A huge part of what we do is around community engagement, which will be close to your hearts in terms of the latter part of what Alistair was just talking about. You know, that real impact at community level and the difference it makes to people's lives. So we're very keen to work with communities, not at them. We don't dare come into a community and decide what's best for them. We want to work with communities and support them on the challenges that they have. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and some of the ways in which we do it. We have a fantastic education and learning portfolio of activity, spearheaded by a programme called Eco Schools, which is run in pretty much all Scotland's schools, both secondary and primary, particularly primary. But we also have a new offer in the secondary school space, which is called Climate Ready Classrooms, fundamentally looking to help young people be carbon literate. And we know that there's a huge part of Scotland's future in terms of its economy will be based around jobs that are labelled green, if you will, both in nature-based jobs, but actually all the adaptation that's coming down the track in terms of electric cars and the use of hydrogen and replacing boilers and all sorts of really innovative work. And actually, it's a really fascinating space around where Scotland, with its hugely innovative history, is actually really taking off, and I know a lot of countries are looking back towards Scotland to see the opportunities and the thinking that's going on in this country. And then finally, we also have a massive commitment to campaigning and research. So many of you probably will be very much aware of the work that we're doing around litter and the national campaigns that we're involved in. All sorts of delicate issues, from dogfouling through to roadside litter. And also we're very much part of supporting Scottish Government and Zero Waste Scotland in the forthcoming tourism season, which we think will have particular pressures. And for many of the groups and locations in which the 1010 groups are organised, I'm sure you're very much aware of the potential pressure that's going to come from more of a domestic tourism market. So fundamentally, combating climate change obviously is a huge feature of certainly my children's life and my life, and it's really heartening that Scotland has such ambition in that area. We've for 10 years operated the Climate Challenge Fund, funding lots of local groups to think about different ways in which they, very much at a local level, can reduce carbon use, adapt to new ways of travel, for instance, and just work through some new innovative ideas. But also in this space, we're doing a huge amount of activity around what we would call carbon literacy training. And I'm delighted to say that that's a really strong area of focus for us, both with public sector and indeed local government. So local government are experiencing our training and get them to change their thinking about what can be achieved as a council, as an organisation, but clearly supporting also locally based groups. In terms of protecting and enhancing places, we spearhead that activity with an amazing network of organisations which we call Beautiful Scotland and It's Your Neighbourhood groups. We having spoken to Malcolm and others from right across the Rotary network, we know a number of Rotarians are involved in these programmes. And in fact, a newsletter that went out just yesterday, we had a fantastic story about how Rotarians been involved in that programmes. Largely people who are involved in not just litter picks, but going beyond that and taking a real civic pride in the places that they represent. And it's extraordinary stories, particularly throughout the last year, how those groups have also been very much at the forefront, as I'm sure Rotary has, at supporting our fellow citizens in fairly difficult times. So an extraordinary network, which I'd love to see Rotary have a greater involvement in that. And then finally, I think since speaking to sort of the last 9 months where I've been speaking to Rotary groups, a huge issue I think for you as clubs, certainly it's appeared in the question and answers, is that thorny issue of reducing litter in particular, and also how we treat waste. And I know it's been of real interest to your fellow Rotarians in other clubs, but we really do feel that there's a national emergency looming if we don't fundamentally change our relationship with litter. We have empirical evidence that shows for the last 5 years this problem has been getting worse. And our plea, I think, is to really shift that understanding that litter is almost hidden in plain sight now. People are almost immune to looking at it. And fundamentally, we need as a country to have, as I say, quite a different relationship with us. But consumption in our country has changed enormously. And if I just give you an example of going to the garage, say 15 years ago, going to the garage 15 years ago was literally about filling your car with diesel or petrol. Now you can do half your week's shopping, pick up newspapers, get a coffee, grab a sandwich, and fundamentally that rubbish has to go somewhere. And sadly, it's not getting to the places which really keep it out of our environment. So lots of positive activity from us in that space, and perhaps something that a lot of groups want to talk about. And it seems to be that for the potential engagement with Rotary, it seems like a fantastic place to start, and we really would value that opportunity to work with Rotary around what we call our umbrella body for all of that activity is called Clean Up Scotland. And I think at this moment, Malcolm, I'll just pause because I think you'd like to say a few words at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I mean, the proposal that's coming from the Rotary districts is that we collaborate with KSB towards the end of May, beginning of April, and have a litter clean campaign with clubs joining in and hopefully clubs facilitating within the community action. And then from that, hoping that that could be the trigger to engaging in a broader portfolio of climate-related activity. I noted on the chat earlier somebody making the point that looking towards the environment, etc., is a key way of introducing a younger generation into Rotary. And in that context, Barry, do you have the slide of the grid?
I do indeed, Malcolm.
So this really impressed me, and I've spoken to about 20 plus clubs in the past 2 or 3 months over Zoom. Zoom has been a huge boon to me communicating with clubs, but this grid really impressed me. The activities that Keep Scotland Beautiful engage with and could well resonate with your club and the folks in your area. And so if we can pick up on the reducing litter and waste middle strand there, we don't have a beach in Kirriemuir. Well, we've got a lot of beaches, but never a beach. Anyway, we do have upstream though, and we could join the notion of a beach spring clean by cleaning the burn that runs through our town, just as a very small example coming off that. But what we're hoping is that engaging in the litter pick in the first instance triggers a relationship with KSB, and that really encourages clubs to pick up on these other KSB initiatives. Barry, does that make sense to you?
Yes, thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, I mean, I think we would love to speak to Rotary groups about joining our networks in lots of different places, but I think that some of the litter activity seems a fantastic way for a number of groups to start. And as you say, with the 1010 districts here today, the diversity of clubs that you've got, both from some of our island and rural communities as much as some of our more urban town opportunities. Clearly, I think what we're offering is a diet of different approaches which will be relevant to some of the issues that you'll face. And so it should be. There should be different challenges in different areas. But we would just like to invite and have a greater relationship with Rotary, principally because we see that opportunity for you as community leaders to spread some really positive messages when groups come to you, maybe looking for support and advice. that if nothing else, you know who to put them in touch with some of these environmental matters. But we do think there's, and having spoken to Malcolm and other people, we know that there's a number of Rotarians look like they're very keen to undertake our programmes, which we're hugely excited about. And I think, Alistair, I know there's a former president on the call today who said to me and agreed with you that actually one of those opportunities for Rotary to celebrate the fantastic work that it does in communities, and I think there's something quite visceral about some of, particularly the litter space, that provides that opportunity to demonstrate where Rotary, as I know, makes a massive difference. But maybe there's a fantastic further opportunity to talk about that through our network as much as your own, and we'd love to be involved with you in that. So I'll pause there and maybe stop sharing if that helps as well, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Barry. Alistair Risk has his hand up. I think, Alistair.
Yes, it's not the first time I've heard you speaking about the environment and all the good things. And I think Rotary and you share lots of ideas and activities, and it's a nice feeling of that we get from that possibility. Because of earlier conversations and speakers as well, I have a leading question. You've spoken to lots of clubs and to district, and you've admitted that you're within District 1010. How many clubs have asked you to join them?
I have had the great pleasure of many clubs over the years asking me to join them. But I know that from my perspective, the commitment in terms of the stage of my life with a couple of kids is not something I've been able to do. But I've genuinely had the great pleasure of being invited, not just in this role, but in previous roles.
Because the follow-on question was, what prevented you from joining? Because I'm sure we'll be joining you, and I'd like to think that at some point in the future we could welcome you so that we can share the vision together and fellowship at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair.
Thanks very much, Alistair. Maybe Barry, you'd be one of the candidates for one of our e-clubs. That might be the answer.
We have three hands raised. Jim Allison's first.
Jim Allison, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Barry, for that. Yeah, we've done some work this year, started off with some work with Fife Coast and Countryside Trust, doing some environmental projects. I just wondered, do you liaise with them, or are they a separate entity? Well, they are a separate entity, obviously, but what sort of links do you have with these, maybe more district type or local organisations?
Yep, thanks, Jim. Actually, we've got really close links with that particular organisation. Our communications manager sits on their board, so we are two separate entities, but we've got very, very close links, particularly with that organisation. And I think that's a strength that keeps Scotland beautiful. That with a sort of national focus is able to have relationships with a large number of groups. And I think what Malcolm and I and others talked about in terms of the relationship with Rotary is the way it should be, which is good collaboration without necessarily there being sort of firm partnership agreements in place or anything. It's purely an opportunity, I think, for the programs that we offer, and for some of those Rotary groups who are looking to particularly increase the activity around environmental, because I know it's been an issue that you've adopted relatively recently, rather than maybe seeking to invent a program. Maybe there's an opportunity to use some of our existing programs, and we're just thrilled that you would join the network. So in answer to your question, good relationships with a number of different organisations who quite rightly act quite autonomously. We've got a number of groups, for instance, in the Ayrshire area who've got a very particular interest, for instance, in keeping a beach clean. We've got a great relationship with them, and continue to want to, if you like, build a much bigger tent.
Right. Thank you, Barry. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Jim. Irene Walker, please.
Yeah, my question is rather similar to Jim's. I'd be quite keen, Barry, to hear what your relationship is actually with local councils, with their responsibility for litter collection, and also the private companies who mainly deal with collection from commercial premises. What's that relationship?
So we have regular dialogue with a number of authorities, some greater than others. Some of that is where authorities have asked us to come in and support them. So if I can give you an example of Glasgow, Glasgow want to work with us because, in their words, they can't spend any more money in bins. There's just no point. The bit that's actually missing is education. And there's a fantastic opportunity, what we would describe as community conversations, which frankly, if it was just between a council and a community, I think there would just be a discussion about, you know, whether the bin collection program is right or wrong, or whether there, you know, a street light was out in Bankhouse Avenue or something, you know, rather than the bigger picture of how we can all work together as communities. So we're certainly going to be doing that with Glasgow. In terms of relationships with private companies, we don't always have a direct relationship with them. We do speak to there's an institute that sort of gathers those organisations, so we have a conduit to them. But I think it's important as a charity that we remain and seem to be remaining fairly independent, so we can have, you know, a fairly strong and credible voice. We released a report at Christmas, Irene, which was principally to do with what we consider to be a looming litter emergency. And I think if organisations felt that we were, you know, or government or local government, or indeed the public felt that we were a mouthpiece for an organisation, I don't think that would have credibility. Having said that, the retail sector, particularly the food retail sector, we have a good working relationship with, and we support them where they're genuinely trying to take action. So, for instance, we've got a relationship with McDonald's, who I'm sure maybe some of you will be aware they've reduced certainly the plastic out a lot of plastic out of their food wrapping and material that you would actually receive the food in. But there still remains a challenge around where customers are just not depositing that material in the right place. So they're coming towards us positively. That doesn't stop us, you know, speaking and advocating on behalf of the problem, but it seems like a good relationship to work creatively. And finally and briefly, we had a fantastic programme in Glasgow, the Glasgow Cup movement, where we work with both the local authority and the private sector, Pret a Manger, Costa, McDonald's, Greggs, to remove specifically the issue of recycled or cups that can't be recycled actually off the street. We managed to take 500,000 cups there. So I think we want to work positively and purposefully, rather than just complain at an organisation. You obviously might be part of the, you know, fundamentally the amount of litter on the street. So that's very much part of our DNA, to be positive in moving forward.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks, Irene.
Thanks, Irene. Brian Johnson, please.
Thank you, Alistair. Barry, I'm interested to hear what you're saying about the litter and the relationship that you got with Glasgow and the idea of education. In Glen Rothes, we've had 2 or 3 litter picks. We did one last week in our town park and found that some group had been before us and taken a lot of litter away. And the time we'd finished, the place was spotless. It was terrific. And we got comments from people there. My fear is that it seems to me that you can have 10,000 people picking litter on a Saturday. You can make the place spotless. And on Sunday, you'll have 20,000 people throwing litter out of the windows of their cars. How are we going to get to the problem of stopping people littering in the first place? There's obviously a terrific sense of pride of people that want to keep the place tidy. But we have not got to the bottom of the problem of how do we address the people who have got no interest whatsoever in keeping the place tidy and seem to go out of their way to make it untidy. And the supplementary point to that is, how do you think we can engage with our local councils to say, you've got to make waste collection points so easy to use that people will use those rather than fly tip? Because fly tipping isn't going away. It's an enormous problem. And making waste disposal sites difficult to access for people is not helping. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian, and kind of conscious of time, because it sounds like you and I could have a personal chat that could go on for a long time about that. But in answer, we have a major problem in this country with our relationship with litter. You know, and we have to acknowledge that, because that helps us to move forward. The short and pithy answer would be we have to look over this over the longer term and not expect that purely litter picks alone are going to be the answer, because as you say, we're not dealing with the problem. We're just coping with the situation. Keep Scotland believes that there are three legs to the stool, if you will: education, infrastructure, enforcement, and you have to look at all three. If you purely said we're just going to put the fines up for people, that won't change it, because we know that as litter's gone up over the last 5 years, actually the number of fines being issued has gone down. So that's not worked. Just having too many bins, as Glasgow have told us, isn't the answer either. Fundamentally, people need to change the relationship, and I think there's lots of work to be done, not just in schools, because we don't think that's just the issue either. But there's also something about, and you'll have seen, no doubt, in a local level as much as some of the national coverage, and how the much pressure that's coming on, I think, particularly to retailers, about how they package materials and what they give us. The bag charge, I think, was a huge step forward in terms of the number of plastic bags going into the environment, if you like. But there are other things we can do in there in terms of bottle return schemes and all sorts of things. So without wanting to get very technical, there's a lot of stuff coming down the line, I think, we hope, to do with what's called extended producer responsibility, which again would tackle some of those issues. But fundamentally, as a country, as a community, as an international community, we need to think differently. Very briefly on fly tipping and litter, there's clearly a link. But I think what you have to be just a little bit careful on, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, devaluing that as a massive issue. It's a huge issue. But at one end, fly tipping is something to do with organised crime. It's quite a different kettle of fish to somebody who drips a crisp packet in, Union Street in Aberdeen. So it's part of a continuum. But I think we've certainly made the plea to government: you've got to be careful how you run these two issues together, because you have to deal with them in quite separate ways. But I certainly don't underestimate the problem in local areas. And I would agree with you that some of the issues of the infrastructure around local authorities in that regard is important. At the heart of it, though, of course, somewhere there has to be personal responsibility. So if you've the proverbial man in a van picking up stuff, is that person licensed to take that stuff away? And if they're not, I think you have to challenge the individual and say you're part of the issue. And also, people dropping litter in the street is a personal choice. So there's a huge amount in that, Brian, a huge amount to unpick. I think the short answer is the long term, but we need to get into our heads that we want it to be socially unacceptable. I think that's where we need to go.
Well, thanks very much, Brian. Finally, Jim Houston and then Hilary Gordon, please. You're on mute, Jim.
Apologies. I've just sent a wee message to you, Barry, earlier. Rotary have insurance, and risk assessment is top of every activity we do. I just wondered if you offered training, or at least something online that would cover things like river or beach or street roadside clean, so that we all are acting sensibly. I see a local authority, roadsides in particular, when you've got fast moving traffic, can be a tricky thing to do. Another thing is, can you send out 4 sets of litter pickers for every club in our district? That's 90 clubs, and let's see if we can go from there.
Thanks, Jim, for your question. So in answer to your question, we're able to provide support, advice and guidance. Clearly anything to do with insurance sits with you in the club, but we have developed with Malcolm and colleagues, if you like, a sort of a partners pack, which is orientated towards Rotary, which delighted to work with you and send that out. That's roadside good. Litter, and if you like, that work around rivers, clearly that adds an additional risk. And we certainly wouldn't be promoting people going out on, for instance, the M90 to clean up that was clearly responsibility for all sorts of different reasons to bear Scotland. And then in terms of your final point, we don't have the resources to, sadly, always be able to pass out equipment to all the groups. But what we have created is what we would describe as anchor groups based geographically. And I can certainly, through Malcolm, let you know where those anchor groups who do have equipment. And we've worked with, forgive me, I'm pretty sure that was the Crown Estate who supported us to, if you like, have central stores, if you will, for community-based groups who can support other groups in litter picks throughout the year. So it's not a full answer, but it's not equally not a full no. So we do have equipment out there. Clearly, if there's more to be done in that space, we'll be delighted to go and try and raise money to achieve that.
That's
Thanks,
good. Well, I know that I see from a Boyne, and we know they've got £1,400 for litter picking. And if Malcolm's got the information, if we disseminate it to clubs and how we can get funding would be great.
Thanks, Jim. Hilary?
Thanks, Alistair, and thanks, Barry. And I'll try and keep this quick to Barry. And I think you've already answered all of this, but it's just to say that I would prefer Rotary's energy and enthusiasm to go into the education of trying to get people to stop littering and fly tipping. I just have such a dislike of seeing litter, but I also have a dislike of picking up other people's litter. So I'd like them to stop littering and would like to put my encouragement to that.
Thanks, Hilary, and it's a great point. And I had a discussion in another Rotary group. It was fairly similar, actually, around. It's not necessarily something they felt they wanted to do was do litter picks itself. So I think there's a couple of things we'd absolutely love for Rotary to communicate. And I heard the tail end of the conversation, Alistair, about your reach around social media, for instance. That we do have material that we like any organisation to share about our key messages around littering, and you can get that from us anytime you like, whether it's around a specific issue like dog fouling. And also we did, for instance, a specific campaign around the North Coast 500, which might be of interest to some members here in the call. So, we're able to target that material as well. But in terms of the education piece, I would go beyond that and say it's a leadership piece as well, in terms of other groups within your communities that might come to you who would do the litter pick. It's maybe if there's support that Rotary could do, say for with the incredible fundraising activity they do, maybe there is an opportunity if they were looking for litter pick material that you could support that. So by default, Rotary are part of the solution, which I know is a huge strength of what you do, not necessarily doing all the activity, but very much supporting local groups to take that action too. So hopefully that helps, Hilary.
Thanks very much, Barry.
Alistair?
Yes, sir. Robin?
Yeah, could I just finish? It was just a question of Malcolm's point and also Barry's talk, but we in Forfar, we've just, since the recent slight relaxation in lockdown, we've actually decided to go in pairs to litter pick in different areas of the town. And rather than concentrate in any one area, just each two pairs go in different areas and do it, and it's working very well.
That's fantastic.
Thanks, Robin. Peter, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Just very quickly to comment to Jim leaving that the £1,400 that we raised for litter picking equipment, that was partly 50% of that funding came from Cairngorm National Park, because we are covering Ballater, Braemar and all that as well. The other 50% of that came from Aberdeenshire Council. And they both had funding available at the same time. It was a bit of hassle filling in the forms, etc., but no big deal. And yeah, £1,400 of equipment is not to be sneezed at. So it's worth having a look at what funding is available out there in your area, Jim. And with regard to Barry, thanks very much for your presentation. I would love to get you to come and speak to the guys at our club if that's possible. If not yourself, maybe somebody else from KSB.
Thanks, Peter. I've just put my email in the chat box. As I'll drop the call, I won't get access to the chat box. So if there's anyone looking for that, if they could email me directly, I'd really appreciate that, and then I could pick it up. And if I can do it, I'd certainly be delighted to. I've really enjoyed speaking with groups right across the country and delighted to offer that to 1010.
Thanks very much, Barry. I think we can see by just the number of questions today that how important this is to most clubs in District 1010. So thank you very much. If we can move on now, Ros Riungu and Gavin McKenzie are joint chairs of the Ryla Committee, and they've been working very hard to try and ensure a very safe and exciting Ryla camp for their candidates for this year. Today, I want to ask the two of them to tell us a wee bit more about their plans for Ryla 2021 and how the camps will operate. So over to you, Ros and Gavin.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for this opportunity, and it's been very interesting to hear and be reminded of, why we do this, what Rotary is about, and the fact that District 1010 has over the years inspired over 6,000 young folk, changed their lives, give them the confidence to try new things and to go on into life, to grasp its opportunities and to serve their communities in many ways. I've been involved in Ryla. Well, I was actually a Ryla candidate in 1985, and been involved in Ryla as a leader for 13 years. I think we just need to remember why we do Ryla and what a difference it makes to individuals. And if you ever speak to candidates who've been through the experience, the vast majority will tell you years later that it had made a major difference to their life and give them a very good impression of Rotary. And in time, many of them go on to join the Rotary family. So this year, more than any other year, the cohort of youngsters have missed out on so much. So many school activities and other activities have been cancelled. They've had a year of just not being able to do what many 16, 17-year-olds are able to do. And we're very keen to give them the best and safest experience that we can this July. So on behalf of Ros and I, thanks for the support from the various different clubs. We have 70 clubs signed up to our Ryla page, which gives up-to-date information on what's happened with the Ryla. And we've had about 60 applications from candidates who are being interviewed by the clubs, and that's going very well. For the very good feedback on that. The youngsters are able to apply on their phones now, and that's in terms of the current restrictions. That's been a big help in terms of not shuffling paper around. A few sort of technical points, or I suppose information points that have been raised, just to clarify. We have clarified the insurance situation, so both Rotary and Abernethy Centre have got full liability insurance. There is optional personal accident insurance, which is a separate type of insurance for if somebody has a no-fault accident, trips over, well, at nobody's fault. There's an option, and it's all detailed on the website. If you want details of that, I'll pop that in the chat. But we've managed to clarify what the insurance situation is for everybody. So, some of the challenges that people are facing are around interviewing candidates. A lot of clubs have been very innovative with their use of Zoom and phone interviews. It's very important that the youngsters know what they're coming to, and that the clubs have a good relationship and build a relationship with the candidates for Ryla. So I suppose on to this summer. We've had just in this past week some very detailed discussions with the centre, going over the risks, how we're going to operate this year, how we're going to adjust for some of the restrictions. And as a result, Ryla this year is going to be a bit different. It's going to be a 5-day instead of a 7-day course. And there's going to be a cap on the numbers of currently looking at 42 candidates in each week. So 42 in the boys week, 42 in the girls week. And that's really about accommodation, eating, social distancing, all these issues. So we've worked very hard and had a lot of fantastic advice from Rotary, from the outdoor centre organisation, and from other healthcare professionals on making Ryla as safe and as enjoyable, but still achieving the goals of Ryla, which is to give these kids an inspiring experience, and to learn about leadership and to learn, you know, to how they may realise their potential. So that's the restrictions. Well, you know, Ros and I will be putting out quite a bit of information on the RILA 1010 website in the next few days. This is hot off the presses. We're just really in the last few days been just finalising these adjustments, and we'll be communicating those out. Couple other points. You know, we will be setting a cut-off date for applications. We've had quite a few more applications for girls than for boys. So for those of you who are involved in recruiting, you know, if you can bear that in mind, that the girls' camp is filling up. The boys' camp is about half full. So that's nothing new. I think boys are just not quite as forward thinking in terms of applying. So essentially that's the update we'll be providing on the RILA 1010 website. We'll be providing all the detail of this. Just seen a couple of questions that, you know, has the cut-off date been decided? No, it's not been finally decided. I suspect actually it's more like to be full rather than have a cut-off. So, but we'll communicate that out. We were working to a cut-off date of end of April, early May, but I suspect that certainly the girls' camp will be full before then. So, so that's the update. Happy to answer any questions. I see Jim's got his hand up.
Thanks, Gavin. You're sorted out at the camp with eating and so on, and the groups. We had buses, you know, taking the kids to the camp. Were you going to change that to say get them one way there, or get Rotarians to take them? We're
looking at options there. We're looking at the main option is to see if we can get a large bus with less folk on it, so that they can sit socially distanced, probably wearing a mask. There is guidance in terms of the coach operators, and we're liaising with them to work out the best way. We'll probably have less pickup points than we have in the past, to just reduce the contact and issues there. But you know, that's something that we're working on just now, just to try out the best way to do it and getting the guidance from the coach operators.
Thank you.
John Milne, please.
Can I ask a wider issue, or a wider question? We had a Rotary GB&I youth meeting last weekend, and I was sitting in with my Rotary kids and Interact had, and there was a presentation about RILA at that, and they talked about senior RILA and junior RILA. This is down south, and we were both on it. Senior RILA. Gavin?
So yes, and basically there was some new guidance issued a couple of years ago around the age groups for RILA, and we've had quite extensive discussions about that, and that will be ongoing. Some districts every district operates RILA very differently, and there's a part of the guidance is that, you know, you can have RILA for 14 to 17 or 18-year-olds. It's a bit ambiguous, but we've been told categorically that we can't have anyone over 18 at the same camp as someone under 18. But senior RILA is something that some districts operate. It's less common than junior RILA, and junior RILA being under 18s. Senior RILA is often people who are working in their early 20s, and offers that quite a different program, more sort of management leadership type things. But every RILA is different, so we operate effectively a junior RILA in terms of that category, you know, a senior RILA would be something very different, something that we can look at, but not something that's on the cards this year.
The reason I asked the question was it seemed to me to tie in very well to what Alistair Rob was saying earlier in terms of trying to have a more integrated approach to membership recruitment and development. And what I heard, and I maybe misheard it, Gavin, was that they seemed to have a senior RILA age group that mirrored the Rotaract age group, and they were talking about 18 to 30. And that also, they seem to be also talking about, you know, having the continuum right through from Interact, Rotaract, RILA and Senior RILA. So you've got a continuum in terms of the different stages at which people could become part of the Rotary journey. Does that make sense?
Exactly what I said.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. You know, you know, we very much ensure at RILA that we sell the Rotary brand and tell youngsters about it. And indeed, you know, I was at RILA in '95 and joined Rotary some years later, partly because I was well disposed towards Rotary because of my experience at RILA. And we tell the youngsters about Interact, Rotaract, etc. So, you know, it's something for the future and we can look to develop. You know, RILA is something that makes a massive difference to individuals and gives them inspiration. And hopefully, you know, will basically be something that generates members in the future. And there are quite a number of Rotarians now who have joined, having attended RILA in the past, and same for Interact, Rotaract. So it is something that, you know, we liaise with the membership team and with Alistair on making sure that we use this opportunity to you know, to basically integrate the whole Rotary family together, and RILA is part of that.
I think, John, that Gavin, with respect, that's probably a discussion that needs to be had out of this meeting. It's a different topic altogether. We're really talking about this year's RILA. Elaine, Sarah, did you want to finish off there, please?
Yes, I've just got two questions here for Gavin. The first one is, given it's COVID, what are the activities this year and how are you managing the COVID sections around it?
Yeah, okay, so this is something we're working very closely with Abernethy on, and we will be adjusting the activities, and we're looking at a number of options as to whether we can treat teams with at RILA as a bubble or not. And if we can, some activities will be able to proceed, and if not, we'll have to adjust activities. So, you know, things like you know, you know, kayaking, etc., should be fine. Other activities which require physical contact, we will have to see how the guidance goes, and we'll work very closely with Abernethy, because they're currently, you know, planning these courses and getting guidance. So we'll follow the guidance very carefully to ensure that we adjust the activities to be as safe as possible and in line with the guidance at that time. Okay, thank you. My second question is, what are you going to do to try and find out, maybe even on a sort of questionnaire or something, about what social media platforms this age group actually use? Yeah, to be honest, we're working with a number of helping clubs promote the social media. Instagram, Facebook is not really one that I use. So Instagram seems to be pretty popular, and TikTok to a point. But we're basically, you know, we're working with the youngsters. You know, when you're there on the week, you know, it's quite obvious. You know, you can see what they've got on what they're on their phones and just ask them. So Instagram is very popular, but also it's about reaching out to parents, to teachers, to others. So it's not just the candidates themselves that we want to communicate with. You know, their parents are potential Rotarians. Their teachers are, and quite often it's those cohorts that nudge the youngsters to come along. So we're trying to use quite a broad you know, range of social media to communicate with the audience.
Will you be promoting the e-club with them?
Sorry?
Will you be promoting e-club with them?
Yes, I mean, you know, we generally have the GG or someone along to speak to the candidates directly about how, you know, what the options are for Rotary, and e-clubs are very much part of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Okay, moving on, conscious of time here, but with a lack of face-to-face district meetings this year, there's been no opportunity really for clubs to purchase goods from a district shop. And we are in the process of setting up an online store at the moment. But in the interim, I'd like to ask Alison Steadman just to let us know about how we can go about purchasing goods whilst we get the shop ready. Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Alistair. Fellow Rotarians, I'm still here and desperate to be up and running again. Not being able to have my usual stand at conferences, assembly and council meetings, I have cupboards absolutely bulging with Rotary supplies, from every conceivable badge, new member pack, to caps, polos, barbecue aprons, etc., etc. As Alistair said, we had hoped to have an online shop by this time, but events overtook me last year and I had to take a back seat for personal reasons. And subsequent events have delayed this again this year. But not only do we seem to be moving in the right direction COVID-wise, I'm now hoping that you will all spread the word that I'm very much open for business. The only things I'm not able to supply by return of order are items requiring to be engraved, which may take a few weeks. I'm working on an abridged price list, which will be available shortly, should anybody want that. My email address is in the handbook, and Kath has mailed all club secretaries that I am ready to serve. The new Rotary year is fast approaching, so please get your orders in soonest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. Next up, I'd like to ask Conference Chair John Johnson to say a few words about the online conference planned for later this Rotary year. Over to you, John.
Basically, we're instead of going to the Gardyne Theatre as we were intending to do in October, and instead of going to Dunfermline as we were intending to do in April, we are now in June the 6th, and we've decided that the venue for the conference is your own living room, kitchen, bedroom, conservatory, back garden if it's sunny, and we're doing an all-day session. So we have a morning session which is 2 hours with 4 speakers. We have an afternoon session which is 3 hours with 5 speakers, and we're doing an evening variety type event as well. To launch all this, we have a website that will be up and running, and registration will be able to happen from the 1st of April. And then further information on that. We have a few slightly different things that we're trying to do this time, because we have the advantage of being on Zoom. So we're asking for club involvement. We would like all the clubs to suggest a charity and have one of their reps, a club rep, to be able to speak on this charity for 1 minute. Now, all we're going to do is say, please send in your options and information. We will randomly pick 4 of those to have a minute each at the conference to tell us about their charity and why it deserves to have a prize money. We're looking at £1,000 to that charity. So it's worth it for everybody to do it. There'll be an online vote on the day, so it will be a live event, and the winner will be announced there and then, and they will get £1,000 for their charity. Just something a little bit different. For the evening session, we're looking for clubs to kind of give us an idea of, we know there's a lot of talent out there. We had a 10-10 choir sort of set up and other little bits and pieces going on over the years, but we're looking for the talent that you've got in your club, whether it's musical, entertainment, anything like that. About 5 minutes in a video, send it in to us, and we'll do a Rotary Got Talent within the evening event. And I think that will be something a bit different, and it will show us what we're doing across the whole region. The whole point of the conference is Rotary in the heart of our communities, and it's important that we do this as well. With it not being a face-to-face meeting, the House of Friendship and Rotary Showcase will be an online event. So again, if you used to take part in the House of Friendship or did anything for the Rotary Showcase, please send us a page front information with a link direct to your website, and people will be able to go into our conference website and then actually have the ability to link directly into your own website. This will then spread the information between everybody. Really looking forward to it. It's something different. It's a challenge. It's been a challenge, but as the saying goes for the year, Rotary opens opportunities. So we are certainly opening the door to something different this time. And Alistair, we look forward to celebrating your year in charge. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great day. Any other business?
No hands up.
No hands up. Okay. In that case, then I need to ask Assistant Governor Alistair Walker to give the official vote of thanks, please, Alistair. Alistair, you seem to have disappeared.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's it.
Right. Fellow Rotarians, members of Rotary, ladies, gentlemen, as we're all aware, we're living in very exceptional times, and I'm sure you will all agree that District Governor Alistair, District Governor-elect Heather, and the district team, following on from last year's team, have stepped up magnificently to the challenges that have risen because of the pandemic. They have obviously applied all their enthusiasm and their efforts to planning for the future and developing a strategic plan, which is so important to fit in with what Rotary will become in the future, and to take on board the need to increase membership and diversity and make Rotary fit for the times we now live and work in. Thank you, Rotary GBNI President Tom, for your thought-provoking, inspirational address to us today. And thank you, District Governor Alistair, District Governor-elect Heather, and the District 1010 team, and all who have addressed us today for the inspirational presentations and words of hope and encouragement. The ball is now very much at our feet. So let us follow the vision of the district national teams and build a new and exciting future. Let us not dwell on the past and the negatives, but to grasp the openings and opportunities now available to us, and let us move forward with hope. To do nothing is no longer an option. Now is the time. Let us move forward and grow Rotary. Please join me all in thanking Rotary GBNI President Tom, District Governor Alistair, and all who have taken part in this morning's meeting.
Thank you very much, Alistair, and thank you all for your attendance at today's meeting. It's been great and shows, I think, the power of Zoom. We've had over 70 clubs represented here today with 140 people, a great turnout. I hope it was enjoyable and informative for all of you, and thank you and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Safe journey back to your couch, as Ken says. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.